So, hello. Today we have the opportunity to talk with Mr. Ismael Peña-López, who is the General Director of Citizen Participation and Electoral Processes of the Government of Catalonia. He also has a broad curriculum in research and teaching on IT tools, development cooperations, open access, among other topics. So we're talking with him because we are making a round of presentations with experiences that have been awarded in the 14th IOPD Award 2020. And one of these experiences is the gender mainstreaming strategy for citizen participation of the Catalan government. And we would like to talk about this experience. So thank you, Mr. Peña-López, for your time. Before going about this policy, could you put us in context briefly about the competencies in citizen participation of the Catalan government? So do you organize participation on government policies, or do you also influence in the participatory policies of local municipalities in Catalonia?
Okay, I would say that both. What the Directorate General does is, on the one hand, coordinate like horizontally where everything that is happening on citizen participation at the level of the Catalan government. This means helping the 13 departments to put forward their own strategies for participation, from urban planning to participation at schools, things related to development cooperation and environment. So everything that the national level or the regional level that is happening at the Catalan government, we help the units that are fostering these initiatives to have the methodology, to have the resources, etc. But also we lead a coordination network, which is called the Network of Open Governments, which is made up by almost everyone at the public level, which means local administrations, regional or sub-regional administrations, consortia, etc. And with them, we try to put forward the same agenda, regardless on whether you are the Catalan government or you are a big or small town. Kind of strategies that we coordinate, it's what kind of technology we can put forward for participation, for managing programs on participation or for online participation, training, which kind of courses, which kind of certificates, which kind of knowledge. We publish guides. We agree on what methodologies are best. We try to do some research on what methodologies. So more or less, the idea is to create an ecosystem of citizen participation that we sort of lead or try to articulate.
Great. So now let's focus on the gender issue and the gender approach in participation. So let's ask as before. So do women participate less in public consultation? Is in around quantitative terms, so it's fewer women participate, or it's more in a qualitative terms, so they speak less in meetings, or they propose fewer things, or maybe their voice is less heard, no? What do you think about this issue on the women in participation?
Well, the thing is that what we found out, looking at what research is publishing, is that by trying to improve participation and by trying to improve policy making and the decisions we make as public bodies, and we thought that by putting more eyeballs or more ears or more brains on policy making, we could end up by making worse decisions instead of better ones. That is, and the best example that I always put up with is we have participatory budgeting. We have some budget to allocate to either street lights or a new football field, sorry. And people usually would choose the latter, would choose to have a bigger soccer field or football field instead of having better lights on the streets, which we know is one of the reasons that women are more raped or are more harassed during nights and after having some fun and going back home. So this is one, I say again, it's a very simple example, but it can get more complicated in how women are more silenced, they have lesser voice, their interest might be perceived as something that is particular to them. And that means that many decisions and the way we make decisions can harm 50% of the population. So the idea was, how do we choose the topics? How do we manage or facilitate the meetings? How we do assess the final impact? How do we communicate? When do we call people to participate, etc. And all these topics or all these things, all these subjects do have an impact on the final quality of the participation. So it's not as much as women participate less. It's really much more complex, and it has a lot of ramifications or implications in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. So can you explain what this strategy of the Catalonian government is and how it has been adopted?
So after having this first realization that it was very complex and that was in many ways or in many steps that we could be harming rights instead of improving policies, we began with an audit or what we were doing. Afterwards, we planned or we drew some internal protocols to improve things. And finally, well, in between, we had some training sessions. We drew these protocols, and finally, we made a guide. That is in a nutshell. So the first thing we did is identify the key steps where we could be having something to say about gender. First one is public procurement. Depending on who you hire to help you on doing whatever in the design of a participation process or in the facilitation, you can have that view or not. For instance, if you are hiring someone to facilitate, if they have a record or they have an experience or they have a knowledge on how to deal with gender mainstreaming, they can have a better design of the participation process, or they can facilitate it better. Or on the contrary, maybe you might be helping some firm which internally is treating their women very badly. So the first thing we did is to make a protocol on public procurement. We want that the firms we hire are sensitive to this issue within themselves. I mean, they have plans against harassment, for instance, or they have been trained so that they work on equal terms, women and men. And the second thing is that they can, or that they are able to deploy the different processes with having this gender view or this mainstreaming view. The second thing is on how we inform and communicate. So the information we put forward, the way that we send it to the citizens, that we want them to call and participate, it's not neutral. It's very different if you send it to a bar and you say, hey guys, do you want to participate? Or you make sure that you are getting everyone in. And for instance, you know, where some women might meet and that will never approach the administration, then find where people meet, where everyone is meeting, where everyone having their own channels and be able to reach everyone. We know that public spaces are more populated by men. We know that private places or domestic places or places where care or health services are more populated by women. So be able to have the message and the channels that are easy to approach women. Third thing is how you facilitate the stuff. It's not the same thing to approve things from majority. We know that this usually benefits men, or to reach consensus or to reach huge agreements. We know usually provides more neutral or more equitative results. And the last thing is how you assess or how you evaluate, knowing which topics are more dominant for men or for women, how women felt empowered or how women felt that their political efficacy was improved, that they had the chance to really attend or to effectively attend. For instance, if you ask people to meet on a Sunday night, you will have no men there. So again, it's not only about calling people, but assessing or evaluating what happened, both with quantity and quality. So all these topics, we develop our own protocols. We assessed our own practices here. We liberate our own protocols, and that is the thing that we put out in the guide, how to replicate what we did during a year.
Great, thank you very much for the complete explanation. So during maybe the moment of the designing this guide and this strategy, could you tell us about the main challenges you faced during the planification and also maybe in the implementation of these different protocols and strategies?
I would say that the two biggest challenges are one that is more or less known by everyone, the other one not that much. The first one is resources. If you want to do things right, you have to dedicate resources. This means sometimes money, sometimes or usually it means more time, and specifically people that are knowledgeable about this thing. So money, time, and people, which it's something that is normal in democracy. If you want to have quality democracy, you have to pay for it. That's not secret. But in that case in particular, it means that you have to put this extra effort to run this extra mile so that you don't forget anyone. Again, this is something that we already knew. When you are mapping all the actors on a specific topic, you know that the more time you devote to it, the more people you devote to it, the more resources, the better you will do that mapping. But in that case, it's especially sensitive. The second issue might be something that is not that, I think it's evident, but it's more evident once you realize it. It's the intersectionality of the gender factor. It's not the same thing being a woman that is white and is educated and has a good job than being a woman that is migrant, has no education, and is working outside of the formal economy. So it's not about being a woman or not. It's about what is the big context. And this makes things even more difficult because, again, you might be having a very good strategy, including women in your policy, and actually you're creating a new bias. In that case, it's a class bias, or it's an origin bias, or it's a cultural bias. So that is I think the toughest part, seeing that it's not about gender, actually. It's about inclusion, it's about general inclusion, it's about seeing how good and bad factors multiplicate each other and amplify each other.
Indeed. And can you already point out any transformation like as consequence of this policy, like inside institutional, but also like outside institution, like in community or in society of this strategy?
It's very soon to see the big impact because we just created, the whole strategy was created in 2019, and actually we ended it by mid 2020 or early 2020. But I think that the fact of doing this and the realization that we were uncovering for us new ground on uncharted ground, that already has brought us some view. Some people call it the purple glasses. I think that we now wearing these purple glasses, not only the team of the General Directorate, but all the other departments that were collaborating with us in this. So knowing that there's something that we have to focus on, that is not something that you can like correct afterwards, but it has to be in the design of any kind of policy process, not only participatory process, but any kind of policy making process, that you have to be trained, that you have to be aware of things, that you really have to have this checklist. I think that this already had an impact of being aware, which is something that we were, I think that more or less we were like tacitly or implicitly aware of, but now we are explicitly aware of, and we know all the traps that we can run over during the whole process of designing and implementing some participatory process. So maybe awareness is something that is not a big impact, but for us it's huge because now we know that at least we are not unaware of the hazards of doing things bad.
Nice. So you have commented the issue of the intersectionality, so the relation between not only like the gender issue, but also all other social or issues. So do you think this example could be replicated in other in other fields, like not just in gender, but also like in migrant population, in some like in accessibility issues, no, in different kind of of frames that are in our society? So could be a good example for replicated in other issues that could be helping for a more inclusive, democratic ways of participation.
Sure, definitely. On the one hand, on a vertical approach, a sectoral approach, by doing this effort on being aware of what was going on at the gender level, we realized that we might be having just the same problem with disabilities. It might be not the same amount of people. Gender is 55%, 51.5%, And in disabilities, in the case of Catalonia, it's more or less 15%, that more or less people that have some kind of disability. And for instance, or just because of this, the next big project will be on disabilities next year. So I don't know if we will follow exactly the same procedure, but more or less will be something similar to see are we aware of all the different kinds of disabilities, like temporary or permanent, and all the kinds of disabilities, and then again, how they intersect with other like sectors. I don't want to call it minorities because this is huge, but like other kind of communities or approaches. So definitely, I mean, we've seen that there are many things that we cannot forget or be not aware of. Disability will be the next one, but of course, migration and other cultural approaches are definitely the next ones too.
Great, nice to hear that. Okay, so as you know, the IOPD is a network of local and regional governments, so we're trying to connect different governments in order to inspire each other and share experiences. So yeah, the question is in this sense, no? So have you been inspired, the Catalan government, by other countries, cities in order to develop this gender approach? So yeah, do you have been inspired by other, or maybe also community organizations could be in this?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the yes part is that, of course, we are not the first ones to discover the gender mainstreaming, not at all. And there's been like several very interesting initiatives at many levels on gender mainstreaming in general, at work, for instance. There are some researches on, especially on political parties and parliaments, if they're balanced or not. In development cooperation, I think it's the best examples that we found out at UNDP and other agencies of the United Nations, where, again, trying to make the best on development cooperation and humanitarian aid without this gender approach could be more damaging than helping. So we learned a lot from the development cooperation community. But I would say that on participation specifically, we found nothing at all. So that's why the yes and no. I think that yes on what happens at work or what happens on community development. For instance, on urban planning, there was a lot of it too, on development cooperation, especially in policy making in general. But in particular, we did not find anything. So that's why we ended up doing the guide, because we thought that what we had learned, we wanted to share.
It's absolutely true that it's not a lot of publications and literature in this issue. It's a pity, but well, it's a good first example of doing this guide. Yeah, it's very inspirational for sure for the other governments or organizations. So, and before ending this conversation, I would ask you about what do you want to recommend or to say to other like local or regional governments that are considering opening up spaces for citizen participation. So what they have to do in order to adopt, to implement participatory mechanism and processes like with this gender approach, no?
Besides the research thing about money, time, and knowledge or people, which is obvious, I would say two things. The first thing is training. I think this it's the first step. I mean, realizing that things that you did not know, that you didn't even consider, especially being a man. I'm sure women don't have, or usually have much more awareness on that. But being man, I think that having this sort of training, and I think training, it's the issue. It's not only reading something. I think that that somebody guides you through understanding, to seeing differently some things, and that is training, that's education. I think this is a must. So everyone should begin by that. Some kind of course, guidance, call it whatever, but someone that helps you see the things that you always thought that you knew, see them differently. That would be the first thing. The second thing is that begin by whatever you want and as small as you want. As we say in Spanish, the perfect is the enemy of the good. So begin by something. Begin by, I don't know, measuring. We actually begin by that. We gathered some questions on our surveys about whether you were a woman or you how can be empowered, etc. And this is, yeah, it's not perfect, but at least you're beginning to do something. Then begin with assessing or evaluating some of your things that you're doing. Just begin to improve some of your communication, or begin to improve one of the 10 sessions that you have planning to do. I think that one of the things that usually stops us from doing things that you want it perfect, you want to do everything right. You don't need to do that. I mean, of course, if you can do perfect everything, that's great. But just begin with something that you can do. The actual change begins with changing the little things that add on your reach, that cost you almost nothing, that you can really do. And then everything just will come smoothly. So training to change the point of view, that is surely the main thing. And then act, do something, begin by something that is easy and you can achieve, even if it's a small success. To go for that. People will maybe criticize that you're not being more ambitious, but things will come.
Okay, so the message is clear: training and act. And yeah, a final question, because I know you are very expert in terms of IT tools. So I want to ask about these relations, about how the IT tools could be considered like neutral in terms of gender or not, or really we have also to think these all the different social networks or platforms to online platforms to regarding engagement. So are they really neutral in terms of gender, or we really think to develop these tools thinking also in the gender approach?
It really depends. No, I mean, the first thing, the digital divide is stronger in women. I mean, it's because of educational issues, because of wealth issues or income issues. So the first thing is that if you want to participate online, you have to have some kind of education and skills, etc. And we know, or access to public facilities or to personal infrastructure. So we know that the digital divide is deeper among women. So first thing, bad. If you want women to participate online, you do have to have this approach. The second thing is that even if you are anonymous online and you would be expected to be more free to speak if you're a woman, that is something that most people say. Well, if you're a woman on a face-to-face setting, people can harass you, or people can make you shut up. Online, you can be no one. That is not true. I mean, it's the culture that you have inside of you, how you feel empowered, how you feel intimidated by others, how you feel confident about yourself, which is not about people giving you voice. It's about people giving you the possibilities of the empowerment, of the confidence. And that is something that does not go naturally by online, but just comes when somebody's guiding you or is helping you. So first thing, the digital divide. Second thing, self-confidence, etc. Both things go against the expectations that the online thing will help you as a woman. The third thing and the fourth thing, which are good, is that it's true that many women cannot go or cannot attend face-to-face meetings because they have some responsibilities, because they have to take care of a lot of things more than men, and overriding the boundaries of time and space can help them. So it's something that is really true also. And it's help people, women especially, to go online and have their say without no one watching them, without not having to be able to do three things at the same time, having not to put their security and the risk, because depending on when you go and when you go, you might have those risks. So in that case, it's a good thing. And the fourth thing, which for me is the most important one, online it's easier to create communities of support, communities that understand you, people that go hand in hand in you, that can help you understand things, that can help you say things. That is usually more easy online, once you are online, of course, than offline. So for me, the four things are very, very important. Digital divide, bad thing. Not feel empowered, bad thing. Having the freedom to access and to have your say, that is a good thing. The fourth thing is that it's easier to create communities of support online. And again, I go back to the intersectionality thing. You might not feel represented by some organizations, by some people, but online it's easy to get this critical mass and people that can help you be there. And sometimes people that can intermediate and maybe talk for you, but before they have talked to you or with you. So I think that these two factors about being more empowered, having more freedom, and especially having this cognitive support is something that we should nurture around this civic platforms of online participation.
Okay, thank you very much for your thoughts. So finally, I give you the floor if you want to make a general comment on this topic, or more a general, the general challenges we have to about achieving a better and more inclusive ways of developing participation and democratic ways.
Well, I would say that as a last thing that I would like to say, which is not strictly related to the to online or offline or gender, but that I think that, as we said before about this intersectionality approach of gender, is that the thing that people in general value most about participation is having their say on things that matter to them, not things that matter to policymakers or to politicians, which sometimes are different things, but to things that matter to them. This is specifically true for women that usually don't find themselves reflected in institutions that are populated by men, white, rich, educated, male people. So having the chance not only to things that we want to put forward, or the administration wants to put forward from a top-down approach, etc., but being able to listen better to communities of people that usually don't have a loud voice, and to find out what are the things that matter to them, the problems that they do have. I think that is a change that we now, with these new glasses, we should be able to do, so that we can foster the most relevant projects for the most relevant people. I think that would be something that we have not talked about. Maybe it was implicit in everything that we've been saying, but I think that better listening and listening better to and identifying who are the people that want to say something about things that matter to them and usually cannot. I would say that this is the main thing that we should be putting forward.